Right, still on that story, the economic freedom fighters have meanwhile slammed what they call the lack of transformation across many sporting codes in the country. The Red Berets say this problem remains a stark reminder of the ANC's government's failure to undo the systemic inequalities. EFF Central Command member Nazier Paulsen joins us now for more. Nazier, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. As much as you celebrate Team SA's victories, the 6 medals and 149 athletes you're saying are indicative of systemic inequalities that we are failing to deal with. The new Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture says he plans in 2028, is it, or the next round of Olympics, to send at least 350 athletes. Do you think there is something in the system that would have, instead of us sending 350 athletes, we only sent 149?
Thank you very much, Thabo. Good evening, and good evening to the viewers. Well, I think we've got 6 medals despite the ANC's failures. Not because of the ANC, but despite the government that we have. If we look at, we're just not a winning nation. A winning nation who's serious about sport would not have the inequalities in sport that we have. If one looks at the Western Cape, there's no greater reminder of how untransformed society is. If you look at the Cape Flats, the townships, there's very few sporting facilities. Then you go across to the more affluent areas, the white communities of Claremont, Bishop's Court. You'll have fields resembling first world countries, similar to those in Japan, where kids can play all day long. So I think this is where the ANC has failed to transform society. We speak about leveling the playing fields. Our communities don't have fields. In Mitchell's Plain, there was once a sports field in Lentegeur where some of the best rugby and soccer teams used to ply their trade. Collegians, one of the top rugby teams here in Cape Town, doesn't even have its own sports field. And they have to go and play on Balhaus Field. So imagine a team who's playing at home has to travel 20 kilometers to go and host a game.
Yeah.
So this is how bad sport is at grassroots level. And if we want to fix the problem, we have to start building the foundation for sport in our communities. And in addition to failing to develop sport in poorer communities, in Black and especially African communities, the ANC is giving up the opportunity for sport to have play a far more meaningful role in society.
Yeah.
There are positive effects that sport has on mental health, reducing stress, anxiety, instilling essential values in our youth, such as discipline, perseverance, teamwork. Yeah. And this is where the ANC is failing society and South Africans at large. So,
having played an oversight role, though, for a while in that parliament, when you look at where we are sitting, do we have enough physical education and sporting programs that are in place? It's just a case of we lack the financing of those. Have we developed them? Are they there? Do you have people with those programs that are in place?
Yeah, I think, the EFF manifesto speaks about replacing life orientation with sports, arts, and culture. And that sports, arts, and culture would encompass languages, sports, culture, and life skills throughout all levels of education. And I'm thinking that, when someone takes charge of sport at school, it's usually someone that has an interest in the sport. That's in the poorer communities. Schools in the poorer communities, the teacher has an interest in that sport and some basic knowledge. But if one goes to the more affluent areas, someone with a training, with the technical skills, and that is very important. When we build that management skills at that grassroots level, it will cascade upwards and be even better at a senior level. This is how you build a winning nation. This is how you build and develop elite athletes that can compete with the best in the world. Like the person said in the interview, you know, we enter a room and we feel inferior to the United States. What is it that they have that we don't have? Number one, they focus on sport. And in 2000, the Minister of Sport, Nkondi Balfour, had an investigation, and he issued a report on how sport should be developed, and nothing has come of it. And I think 24 years ago, there was at least some attempt of the ANC government to do something about sport at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
And that would actually have delivered the type of elite athlete that would be able to compete with the best out there. And you know, it's so important to have the specific training, because there's a lot of science involved in sport. Science is the difference between, if it can give you that fraction of the second that you need, that would have given us a completely different result maybe in the men's 100-meter final. I feel for Akani Simbini. Yeah. But if we do not develop sport and apply the science that is available in sport, we don't have the proper sports facilities that will hold these professional athletes to compete with the best out there. Most of our athletes, they go overseas, they go to the United States, they go to Europe to go and develop further in sport. They should be developed here at home. Those facilities should be available here at home, where someone shows the capacity and the ability to advance in a sport, that we can actually groom that person from a very early age and develop an elite athlete that would be able to compete with the best. But I think it's also, you know, there's no political will to develop.
Yeah. I wanted to ask there, what would be the policy consideration? So if Gayton McKenzie, Minister of Sport, was serious about what he's saying and not just paying lip service and not just making popular statements, what would be the policy considerations that he would need to now take seriously and put in place to build that capacity?
Look, first and foremost, the minister needs to understand sport. The minister said in 2028, we're coming home with a gold medal in breakdancing. It was even before the Paris Olympics that the IOC decided that we will no longer have breakdancing as part of the items in the Olympics. So we won't have nobody will get a gold or any medal in breakdancing in 2028 because it's been scrapped. But I think the minister needs to understand sport. He needs to understand what it takes to be an athlete. You know, the minister just started running now recently. You know, so the minister needs to understand what it takes to be an athlete, the discipline that sport brings to anybody that participates in sport. So I think he needs to understand that. And then he also needs to understand that sport is not just about being able to get the opportunity. You know, sport is about your nutrition, your access to resources and facilities to actually compete in sport. We don't have the facilities in poorer communities, especially not in African communities.
Why though? I mean, why are the actors involved in sport not looking there? Because as you put it, if you look in affluent areas, there is no shortage of facilities.
We don't have politicians that have really been sports people. We don't have politicians. A sportsman knows, I have to do this, that, and the other for the day. And that is how he lays out his day. No sportsman gets up and says, what am I going to do today? He knows already what he has to do for the day. So if we had public representatives that participated in sport, derived value from being sports participants or sports people, they would also want to, they'd see the importance of building a sporting nation. It could address so many of our social ills, especially here in the Western Cape. Here in the Western Cape, in one of the regions here, in Cape Town, in one of the areas, one of the leagues here, there are 16 schools. Between that 16 schools, there are 2 fields. And the condition of those fields are appalling. And I'm talking from an area, very large area, from Elsie's River to Delft. That's a massive area. It's 16 schools. No access to proper sporting facilities. two fields that are very poorly maintained. Now you're going to expect those rugby players to go and compete with the likes of Paul Roos, Paul Gymnasium, Sachs or Bishops, let alone Grey College. It's going to be impossible. They just don't have the facilities in which to develop and their interest in the sport.
Yeah. So when Panyaza Lesufi was still MEC for Education at some point, he would have come up with this proposal to say, you've got Panyaza Lesufi, he's now Premier, but he was still MEC for Education then. He said there was a school, for example, in Alexander with no soccer field. But across the road in Sentin, there's a school with a soccer field. Why can't the two schools collaborate?
Well, it's schools, especially in the more affluent areas, they don't want you to come and use their facilities. But they will say, show us your good sports people, and we'll actually recruit them into the school. So we're taking a learner out of his area because he shows some promise, and we continue to deprive those schools of any facilities. Every school should have access to his or her own facilities. And every municipality should have indoor sports facilities so that even when there's inclement weather, that our kids can still train, that it doesn't stop them. And if we look at a high performance center for sport, so a lot of long distance runners go and train in the Northern Cape because of number one, the weather's perfect. The altitude is perfect also for training, for running events. So we should look at maybe having certain provinces having high performance centers for certain sports as a start. But eventually, all provinces must have high performance centers for every sporting code. You will see how for example, the Western Cape, Western Province Rugby, the Blue Bulls, they have access to the best facilities. Then you compare them to the poorer unions like the Eastern Cape and in the Free State or Northern Cape. They don't have access to that facilities. And you can see the difference in the players. So you lose players who go and play for other unions because they have access to better facilities. That is wrong. We should have facilities in all the provinces, and all schools should have access to decent sporting facilities so that they don't need to leave their communities, so that learners don't need to communities to go to another school.
Yeah, it seems our athletes though have resigned to the fact, if you hear Tatiana Smith there, that we are expected to do a lot with very little resources. So they've accepted this fate that we just don't have. One, the scientific approach to it. Two, the financial backing to be able to do that.
Now, if you look at Tatiana Smith and the javelin thrower, they are a lot more privileged than our poorer African and colored sports people. But if they struggle, imagine how bad it is for a poor black kid from the townships. So this just goes to show how government has really failed the culture of sport in this country. They have not taken it serious. And we need a government that actually takes sport serious. I mean, it's been such an insignificant area that they've even given us a minister that's never had any interest in sport before becoming a minister.
Sure. Nazier, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. As Nazier Paulsen, the EFF Central Command member, calls for transformation, but not only transformation, clear reforms in the sporting codes, scientific approach, resources, building of facilities, especially high-performance facilities that are science-driven for all the sporting codes is what they are calling for.